Andrew, what I like about you is that over the last few months, me delving into learning more about who you are and what you have done, it is not just fascinating, it is so incredible. The resources that you have in your experience and in your heart to help companies when they're going through rough times is so needed right now because a lot of companies are confused, they're scared, and they're behind the 8 ball. So share a little bit about your backstory so we get to know who Andrew is.
Well, interesting story. Started out in Chicago. That's where I grew up. Also an orphan, so I was adopted by a Marine sergeant, World War II Marine, fought in the islands. That is important only because he instilled certain qualities in me, which is that there's a right way to do everything. From trimming the grass to building a shelf to building a house, whatever it might be. So that's kind of where I started. Started my first business when I was 12. Decided to print up some wanted odd job signs. So I went down to the printer. My mom came up with $1, and we got 100 signs, which I pasted on the telephone poles around my neighborhood. Started all this work, and I thought, this is great. I'm going to make $1.10, and I'm going to come home. Well, they had much bigger jobs in mind. Like, I'd have to be there for hours over lunch, so I wasn't even going to get lunch. So I went home the first day and decided to call my friends and hired my friends. So I started my first business when I was 12.
You became a kid recruiter.
I was definitely a kid recruiter because I didn't want to spend all day out there, and some of these jobs are pretty nasty. So, raking thatch out of lawns. I don't know if people have ever thatched a lawn. It's an endless process. You could literally thatch forever. I don't know where the grass comes from, but it keeps coming. So started that. Got a lot of satisfaction out of making money and doing jobs and getting rewarded for hey, good job, that kind of thing. So that meant a lot to me. I always wanted to prove myself to my mom and my dad. They were very responsive to any time I was being industrious and getting things done and fixing things. So the polymath that we've talked about, I ended up realizing that every time I would take something on, I wanted to get the best at it. But as soon as I became best at it, next. So on I would want to go. So worked since I was 12, continued to work through the rest of my life up until this point. So I went on through high school, was an athlete, but I couldn't afford a car and taking somebody out for a date. So I continued to work full time while I was in high school. And then don't know why, but my dad always said, you got to go to college. Well, we didn't have any money, so I decided it'd be great to go enter an OTC and become a Marine because I worship my dad. I worship the Red Book, which is the book that gives you all the rules to be a Marine. So I knew field signals by the time I was 8 years old. We got lost in a mall one time, and my brother and I started singing the Marine hymn until they found us. And they heard these little kids singing the Marine hymn. So pretty much a jarhead since I was born. So got this NROTC scholarship, which was great, and they were going to pay for my college. And I decided, well, where do I want to do this? I'm going to fly jets, specifically fighters, Harriers, and I'm going to ski. So I got enrolled over at University of Colorado Boulder, and life couldn't be better. I'm going to be a Marine, I'm going to ski, I'm going to fly fighters. This is great. Then the Marines decided that they saw something in my test scores and said, well, you need to be in intelligence. Well, wait a second. I'm going to fly a fighter, or I'm going to read books or reports or whatever happens in intelligence. So I rebelled against that and asked them if I could back out of the program, and they said yes, but you shouldn't. And I said, well, I'm out. Well, it wasn't the greatest move because I didn't have any money. My parents didn't have any money, but I needed to go to college. So to make a long story short, I didn't even know what my GPA was at the time because it wasn't part of my plan. It didn't really matter. My parents never asked. I worked and went to school, didn't get too much trouble, and off I went. So that led me to junior college. I couldn't get into a major university at the time. My brother was a super genius. We're both adopted and both from very different backgrounds. So he was a super genius, a big, dark, hairy guy, and I was a little bitty, skinny, blonde kid and thought I was just an athlete. So off I go to junior college, convinced the University of Illinois to take me after 2.5 years, take me down. So I became a student at University of Illinois, got honors in mechanical engineering, was going into my master's program when a fraternity buddy named Eggy, sorry, I don't even remember his name to this date, but Eggy calls me up and he says, hey, Bielat, there's these companies out there, Frito-Lay specifically, want you now, and they're going to pay you. Now, I'm still paying my way. I didn't understand loans and I didn't understand grants. We were clearly economically, at the low end, but I didn't do that. So I decided that I was going to go entertain this offer. So I flew out to the Northwest to Vancouver, Washington. They got a tour of the Frito-Lay plant. They said I could work anywhere in the country. I thought, how cool would it be to go from Chicago all the way out to the Northwest and become a professional. So I took the job at Frito-Lay, left my master's degree, I was partially through that, and started in a fast-track leadership program where they just flew us around the country and put us in really cool situations and trained us in leadership and all sorts of cool things. So that was great, but then the military came knocking back on the door saying, you really need to entertain this program we've got. And they treated me right, and of course my worship with my dad and the Marines, and so they got me. So they put me in it was a secret program where essentially I was a plant in the nuclear industry, which was a legitimate job, but they put me in the nuclear industry, and there was a plant up the street here, at which point I started getting into organizational performance and root cause analysis and using my engineering degree and working. I loved nuclear. I thought it was fantastic. And I was in a program where they could call on me if they needed me to come out for short missions, which were absolutely completely confidential and top secret, including the point that they bugged my phones and no one, I couldn't tell anyone until just recently when it became declassified. So, loving life, doing nuclear, I'm cranking up the nuclear curve. I've worked with almost every nuclear power plant in the country on performance, recovery, leadership, organizational and programmatic performance. And at some point, my program ended. It was only 2 years long. Fantastic. Got to see places in the world that most people never see. And then nuclear was starting to get under a lot of pressure. The administration came in and said, we want to shut down nuclear. So they started trying to come up with ways to shut down any nuclear plant anytime. And they wanted to shut down my plant, which was my home plant. And I kind of realized I need to get back to commercial. I need to get back to entrepreneurial. I need to know that the work I do makes communities and people and companies more money. I have to. The work I was doing in nuclear was helping everyone make more zoomies. We called them more power. But they could still come down and shut you down for any little violation of the technical specifications or whatever it was. So I decided to go into steel, which, because there was a couple of people I'd met at a Dale Carnegie course or something, went down to steel, got in as a quality manager or something they put me in as. I quickly became the chief operating officer of that company and really loved steel. Big stuff, real powerful, recycling. It's a really cool industry. And something told me that wasn't it for me, which is where kind of Andrew, I still think back to those days. I was working for a CEO who was an Army Ranger, great guy. I got along with him fantastically. And he set me up to be the next CEO. And I walk up to him one day and said, I'm not going to do this. And he says, well, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I'm going to do what I do, which I've been doing. We added plants, we closed plants, we changed running the strategy for the company. I had 2,000 people below me. We were running outages. We were doing all these things. I said, I'm just going to do it on my own. I don't know what that looks like. He said, well, okay. So you've done everything I've ever paid you for, and good luck. Well, I went out, started Pilot Advisors. So this is 1997, which seems like a long time ago now, 28 years ago. The mission hasn't changed. So Pilot Advisors was a company that I formed specifically to experience the joy of helping other people experience success. Did I have any idea what I was doing back then? No. I didn't know how to explain it to my wife. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that by being confined to one company doing my CEO or COO job, I was limiting myself somehow and boggled my mind, which Over the last few years, it's really come to light. What I created at the time was an advisory group, not a consulting group. I always bristle when people would say, "Oh, you're a consultant," and I was like, "Ugh." I mean, I hired many consultants, all the top-notch consultants. Some of them made it through the whole agreement with me, and most of them didn't, because they'd bait and switch me. They'd have some really sharp partner come in who actually was experienced, and I knew I could learn from that person, and I wanted my people to learn from that person. And then they'd switch out the MBAs. In come the MBAs, never worked anywhere, got their title, super, super smart people, great intentions. But they didn't have any experience, and they didn't have any intuition. They didn't understand what was going on. They could write great reports, and they eloquent as heck, and I liked to talk to them, but they couldn't do what I needed to do.
No street smarts.
No street smarts, no experience, no, the intuition that you need as a leader wasn't there. And they were just trying to become a partner in their company. They weren't really focused on my performance. So everything I've done in Pilot Advisors has always been about how do I help my clients become successful. There's no partnership roles, there's no growing inside the company. It's only, do we help our clients? And do we help our clients in a way that they don't know we just helped them? I always want the guy who's brought us in and has to stand up against their board and say, why'd you bring these consultants? And we're not consultants, first of all. I want them to know that that was a good move. So recently, it's actually when I met Angelina, we started talking about what I've done, and the reality is I've had to defend my resume. I've worked with 91 companies at this point. I finally counted them up. And I've been successful with 91 companies. That sounds crazy, but I have. They set the process that I've been using since day one is the same process I used throughout my career, which got me in the corporate world and shooting up the ladder. It was find out what people really want to do, figure out if that's possible with what we have, and if it is possible, then help support the execution of that. It's change management. So one of the lessons I learned, and I remember distinctly at Frito-Lay, was I came in and I'm going to fix anything you ask me to fix. I don't care what it is. So we're going to change your ways. You're going to fix the whole system, sending me all over the country. I'm going to fix it. And I was, well, here's the answer. Let's go after it. And I believed if you had the best answer, you were going to solve the problem. And one of my bosses, he asked me, how much attention do you want? Do you want me to be with you and helping you all along, or do you just want to do your thing and see what happens at the end of the year? I said, you tell me, you're my boss, I don't know. And he chose to leave me alone. So he leaves me alone, and we get to the end of the year, and he says, Andrew, you know what? You think everything is black and white. That's a problem. I thought, well, okay, what is that? So the whole next year, I kind of thought about that. What does he mean, black and white? Well, what he meant was, I didn't help people own the problem and understand the solution. I just knew the solution, and I was going to make it happen. And I thought everybody would just jump on board with me and let's make it happen.
Oh, you were a fixer.
I'm 100% fixer. Because that's what I thought the job of being a professional was. Nobody taught me what it meant to be a professional. In fact, most people never learn. What I realized when I came out of college is I got this real shiny mechanical engineering degree. I'm not a mechanical engineer. I'm not going to be designing parts. I'm not going to be testing things. I'm not going to stamp anything. So if I'm an engineer, what am I going to do? Well, I wanted to be the person who gave people advice. They came to me and said, Andrew, what would you do or how would you solve this problem? And I would have that answer. With a twist, that's kind of how it's worked out. The twist was, I don't have the answer. The right solution, or the way I've learned to make things work, is I help bring that solution out of the individuals. It's the only way it works. Now, it sounded like garbage to me the first time I started thinking about that. So even if I know the answer, I'm going to pretend I don't know the answer. That's not how it works. The process that we go through is very consistent. It's always, tell me who you want to be. Why aren't you that today? What have you tried in the past to do that? What's worked? What hasn't worked? And just that process right there. There's a thing called the Hawthorne effect. If you go in and you make a positive change of any kind, and the Hawthorne effect was a psychiatrist or a psychologist, I can't remember, looked at a factory setting where they went in and they changed out all the lighting. And they made it really bright and shiny inside. And production, poof, just jumped right up. That's all they did. They didn't change processes, they didn't lead people differently, they just changed the lighting. That decays. So that performance drops back off because that becomes normal. And then you don't see the impact that the leadership or the company is providing them, listening, quote unquote, to them. So what we do at Pilot, and have done since day one, is now called Fractional COO. So a fractional COO that makes so much sense, and it's so exciting to me personally because I've defended my resume. I've defended my track record. When people come in, well, we'd like you to come into our company, we'd like to be a COO or executive VP or whatever it is. Then they look at my resume and go, 90 companies, what's missing with you? Why are you never sticking in a place? And it was never my intention to stick anywhere. It was my intention to go in. And then I found out about these companies. I just saw one online. It was a fractional COO, and the guy had written a book on it. It's called Wolf's Edge. The guy's name is, I think, Dan Wolf. And I read this thing and I thought, oh, this guy has defined what I've been doing so well. Called him and I said, this is fantastic. You've defined something I've believed in and been doing since 1997. And I thank you so much. And what I realized was there's a need for specifically the function that we perform. There's a need for pilot advisors. We're not consultants. I have to repeat that all the time because so many times, maybe half the time at these companies I've worked with, I followed consultants who screwed things up. Not intentionally, not because they're not smart enough, but because by the time they left, there was more work to do than when they came in, and they're gone. They drop the report off. They give you all this new work that you didn't have designed into your organization, so how are you going to do it? And they haven't helped you drop the other stuff off your list. So I got really excited. They're excited too. So where I'm at now is, the fractional COO thing is specifically needed across the board for the companies that either are afraid, they're worried, and I'm just picture a CEO in the shower in the morning. Well, careful with that. But thinking about it, you worry about it. You've got a team. They might be a great team. You might have really good relationships with your customers. You might have everything going in the right direction, and you're growing, and then the board says, we're going to buy a new plant, or we're going to invest $30 billion in you. You don't have the team to execute on that. I didn't have the team. When they used to do that to me, I'm gung-ho, I'm going to make everything happen that can possibly happen. And you already know when that statement is made or that request is made that you're not going to get to where they think you're going to go. You're going to buy that plant in Arizona, add to our strategic planning, and you're never really going to get the full impact that they're defining is there because you don't have the bandwidth, first of all. Second of all, you might not have anywhere near the experience to get that done. So that's what we've been bringing through Pilot all along, and I didn't know how to define it, was this partner that you tack on for 18 months, and that's the period that I tend to has naturally occurred organically, and also by now definition. I tell people I'm only be here 18 months because what was happening was they liked it. They're like, okay, this is great. We've got Pilot here. We don't really want you to go. And so at about a year, I'm telling them, guys, we've only got 6 months left. So I'm going to start handing things over to your people. I'm going to start backing out. We're not going to see much of me. We're going to, we have to turn this over. It has to be yours when we leave. And that always creates a lot of positive energy, but also a lot of concern about how it's going to work. And that's when you get the offers, well, you should stay and be our COO and all that kind of stuff. It's just not who I am. Clearly, because I've been doing this for 28 years, which all this is shocking to me. So I say these things, and it's still in the back of my head. I just started this a couple months ago. I was still down at Oregon Steel Mills, which was the company I left, where I was slated to be the CEO. It just all happened. It just, the redeeming part of it is that I haven't changed the design of our mission at all. It's always been to find the best tools for the companies to achieve their best possible. Written 2 books about that, so there's 2 books literally talking about how do you become your best possible. And then find the best practitioners on my side, I'll call them fractional professionals, to help them implement. So as I'm revitalizing the company at this point with this clearer mission, I want to make sure that people understand what a fractional COO is. It's not a weakness. It's something that most organizations aren't designed to have internally. Why would you have somebody sitting on the bench learning or working on other companies and ready to come in and help you. It's nonsensical. So it's something that I think every company should know that is available to them, and be able to introspectively look at it and say, why would we think we can do this? Why do we think we can add a whole nother company to our slate and magically integrate them and magically get to the profitability that we pencil out? The spreadsheet's one thing, right? It's not reality when you're talking about cultures, visions, values, equipment, customers, markets, all those things. So,
you know what you remind me of as you're saying this? You remind me of that outside professional, like a coach, when a family is going through adjustments in a household. You've got the parents, you've got teenagers, and there's a bit of chaos going on, and the rules have to shift and change, and there's a lot of adaptability that has to take place, and they reach out to you to come in, and whichever parent calls you in is saying, I can't do this on my own, I don't have the skills, I don't have the bandwidth, I need you, based on what you've done for other families, to help me do the same for mine. And I accept that you're only here for a season, so that you are prepping me to be the head that plays this game after that season is over from that point on. And then as the kids get older and then they get married, you got now the blended family, which is like the different companies that come in and the different employees that come in. And so you're there for a season to educate and empower the leader, who otherwise is going to go gray overnight worrying that they're not enough.
well, I think you hit on a really good one. The blended family. I've had friends today that I didn't really realize the integration of the two, but they married both of the partners had a family. They bring them together, and there's inevitably rifts and problems and things, because who does that? That's not something that's easy to do, right?
Yeah.
Even parenting isn't easy to do. Partnership isn't easy to do. But then you take two partners and with children and family members who have their own culture, their own values, their own approach to things, and try to put those together. And I see the same exact problem. There isn't the bandwidth or the experience, because how many people actually do that? How many people blend their families more than once? I mean, I guess it happens, but so that would be a great. I think it's great for any partnership to get outside support in every way. But to me, it's just the reality that it's not about the ego or about it's a weakness of a company. Companies are built to sustain consistent growth. When people have big problems in their companies or in their lives, or they have great opportunities in their companies or their lives, it's always going to be helpful to have an external source with more bandwidth and more experience.
And the peace of mind that you provide a leader who is scared, who is confused, because they don't have the experience, the bandwidth, they lack the competence, therefore they lack the confidence to lead, and their team knows that they're struggling, they can sniff the struggle.
Well, the problem is they can't let them know it. So the reality of
so you're being
I've worked with
confidential?
hundreds and hundreds of executives,
Yeah.
and they are paid by people who believe in them. They're paid to make the big decisions and do the hard work. And if they don't know that there's an opportunity, a different way to get it done, generally consulting is not a successful path. It's like 93% of the consulting engagements do not produce the results they intended to produce. It's the opposite with fractional COO. It's like somewhere in the neighborhood of, the study was 80-some% of the COOs
You're coaching a team.
are better.
It's like a sport. You're coaching. You're telling the team these are the plays you need to make.
And that's really what it is. I call it fractional COO and with executive coaching, because you really can't do it without them.
Right.
So the idea is what I'm trying to make sure that people understand at the global level is, yes, you are the CEO, and yes, you are the owner or the president or whatever you are of that company. And it's not a weakness to know that you need an extra support function for a period of time. No matter why they hired you, how much they're paying you, what your stocks are, it doesn't matter. It's that you still have to do the right thing. And when I brought consultants in, it was knowing that I didn't want to bring a consultant in, but I didn't have any options.
Right.
So I wanted to prove to my board that I wasn't too proud or too egotistical to bring in someone smarter than me. They were smarter than me, but they didn't have what I needed.
Right.
Now you're bringing in somebody who can actually make sure that your team comes up with the solutions that are going to get you where you want to go, and they own them. And that's, again, big learning lesson for me over life. It's change management. If they own it, and they believe they found it, and they believe and own the solution, it's going to fly. And now they've seen the cycle of how to get that done. And that's what our job is to put in place the cycle and the processes and the practices that will allow them to continue to do this going on through time.
That's cool. So you
really exciting.
you prep them, you launch them, and leave them.
Yep, and they know we're leaving. We're not dropping a report on them and leaving. We're getting the job done, hitting the mark.
And then they're on their own to do it for themselves because you've trained them on how to do it for themselves, which makes them only stronger going forward.